fellow viewer, my name is Gabriel, and today I'm here to talk to you about The Lost Hero by Riordan, the first book in the Heroes of Olympus series. I know this came out over 4 years ago. Better late than never, I guess. I loved this book so much. I honestly just flew through this book. It was amazing. There were absolutely no dead points. The story just kept advancing. I felt like we were constantly moving with these characters from place to place. So good. As soon as we got to Camp Half-Blood in this book, I just got so excited because feelings and nostalgia were just resurfacing from the good old Percy Jackson and the Olympians days. And like most people, I went into this book with a kind of different mindset. Apparently when people went into this book back in 2010, they thought that Percy Jackson was going to be present, a main character like he was in the previous series. I myself decided to go into this completely blank 0.00 knowledge about this book. I thought that we were going to completely discard anything that Percy Jackson and Camp Half-Blood did. This was going to be centered on a bunch of different characters with a bunch of new mythology. When I started hearing that Percy Jackson came in the second book, I thought that people meant like a very brief cameo, but apparently this is not the case, and I am so pleasantly surprised at this. Because people were going into this book expecting Percy Jackson and Annabeth and Grover and the good old gang again, they did not enjoy the new set of characters, and this was not the case for me. I absolutely loved the new characters introduced. Hyper, Leo, and Jason. I really liked them. People say they were very different from the characters in Percy Jackson and the Olympians, and I really tend to agree, but that's kind of why I like them. What's the point of making a new series with new characters if they're just going to be reflections of the previous characters? That's why I really enjoyed the characters in this book. One of the non-spoilery things I can talk about is the freaking originality, and this is obviously something that captures everyone once they start reading Lightning Thief. This man, Riordan, is just, he came up with this multi-million book-selling idea, and it just shows so much in every single one of his books. The originality and the creativity that is installed in these completely amazing bind-up of pages is just so mind-blowing. It honestly holds you. It sucks you in, and you just don't want to stop reading. Another thing that I loved about this novel is that the mystery starts at the very first page and only ends at the very last. And I don't mean last page, I mean last line. That's right, we end in a typical catching fire, what in the effing hell just went on here cliffhanger. I loved it. And I loved it because I have the second book right behind me. It must have been torture for people who read this, having to wait a whole year to get their hands on the next book. I salute you, veterans. If you still have not picked up these books or Percy Jackson and the Olympians, I strongly suggest that you do. Percy Jackson and the Olympians is a middle grade series, and if you anything but a middle grade series, it is so well developed. Again, the creativity is massive, over the scale epic. The characters are some of the most lovable people out there in literature. It just, read them. And if you don't want to read Percy Jackson and the Olympians, then jump right into these books. It's supposed to work as an independent series. It does obviously reference things that happened before, but you can really jump into this without really knowing what happened before. Although I really don't recommend it, I recommend you read everything because these are epic. The sheer size of these things compared to the first series books is just amazing, because that they were approximately half and you got just so much more action. It's targeted for an older audience, and it's just everything about this book was amazing. I loved it. Go read them right now. I will now dive into the spoiler section. Thank you so much for watching until now, and pick up these books. Hi, people who apparently are still with me. So we start out the book, and Jason has just completely forgotten everything on a bus. He has absolutely no idea who he is, where he's going, who are these people next to him. You are immediately thrown into the action. I made a mistake when I thought I could only read the first few sentences of the book because it just really draws you in. You cannot stop reading reading because of how this book starts. And right off the page, you can guess pretty much anything from there. This could go absolutely any direction. It could go north, east, west, south, and anything in between of what you can imagine, and I absolutely loved it. You could only guess at where the story was going. That to me is such an awesome part of any book, really, because you're being thrown blindly into an adventure, and that in itself is gold. So they get to Camp Half-Blood, and I am so excited. Just like I mentioned before, I did not expect this to be linked to PJO. When Annabeth picked them up, I'm like, OMG. I was not expecting that. I loved it. I loved how much I was surprised by this. And when they got to Camp Half-Blood, so many feelings, because I have not visited Camp Half-Blood since 6th grade. It felt amazing to be back into this atmosphere, into this place. The cabins and the training, just Leo gets claimed, and apparently he's a son of Vulcan, or, Hephaestus. Yeah, that. And I'm so glad that he got claimed by a god we didn't know yet. He is going to be a demigod, which we have not followed yet, and I am so excited at this idea. We haven't gotten a son of Hephaestus. I didn't even remember who Hephaestus was. I'm happy that we got an original character with new powers that we get to explore, with a new godly parent that, we either love or, want to stab. Leo is also a fire user, which I loved. It's awesome. This guy's power is awesome. Everything about Leo I loved. He was funny, he had quirky lines, he was Grover, one character that made everything okay with a line of comedy. I loved Leo. Then Piper was claimed by Aphrodite, which I did not see coming. Another god that we haven't seen yet, so effing excited. This is going to be another original demigod. If I remember correctly, we did have sons and daughters of Aphrodite, but not as main characters. So I'm pretty anxious to see what on earth Piper does. And this charm speak thing is just very useful. It's not an ability I envy, by far. I'd love to have Leo's firepower, but it's just so useful to get away with anything, and being the son or daughter of the goddess of love and beauty wouldn't hurt physicality, would it? Piper as a character I actually really liked, because we got to see this very, very vulnerable side to her when she didn't want to tell her friends that her dad was being kidnapped, when she was nearly telling them and then she didn't. I didn't find a problem with that, because under the same situation I would have done exactly the same thing as her. I would have no idea what to do. If my parents were kidnapped and I was told by an ancient Greek giant not to tell anyone, I wouldn't tell anyone, So I really liked that part of Piper. For the rest, I felt like she was a pretty generic character, but I actually liked her. So then Jason, son of Jupiter or Zeus, is a character we've seen before with Talia. I'm still excited because Talia didn't get a huge spotlight the first series. She was a main character, but I think she only gained more importance towards the end of the books. I also like Jason's abilities, but I actually like Percy's way more, because Poseidon is obviously not Zeus. So Jason was another kind of generic character. Even though I liked him, he did add to the story. He's our new leader, main character thing. People are angry because supposedly he replaces Percy, and I don't get how, because Percy still exists. How can Percy be replaced? It's not happening. Anyway, Jason felt pretty okay. I didn't have huge problems with him. Helped Piper when she needed it. He was a friend to Leo. I liked him, okay? He was normal. Another thing that I obviously loved about this book was the way that Rick Riordan joined the two mythologies, Roman and Greek. I loved the way Rick Riordan constructed these two mythologies, pulling it back hundreds of years. It's new knowledge that you had no idea about, and could very well be placed anywhere into the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series, and you did not know. I'm not sure if I'm making myself understandable, but I'm saying that we got this new bit of information that kind of changes everything. And I really like them explaining that the gods in Greece were different from the gods in Rome, because they needed to be more feisty, more angry, more warlike, and I loved this explanation, because I thought that the Roman gods would be completely different gods. And when they explained this wasn't the case, that the gods had many forms, I'm just, oh my god, this is an amazing, fantastic idea. Another item to add to Rick Riordan's amazing creativity. Now, the prophecy. Again, I went into this book without knowing anything, and I refused to take a look at the prophecy because I wanted it to be a surprise. The prophecy was vague, the prophecy was epic, the prophecy held so much promise. Just like every other Percy Jackson prophecy, it was amazing, and I loved the prophecy. I loved everything about this book, if that hasn't been clear yet. The Seven is something I'm so very excited to see more of. It's something I'm so excited to get to know because, okay, we have 3 of the 7 demigods that are supposed to fill this great prophecy: Piper, Jason, and Leo. Obviously assuming that Percy is in these 7. But what if he wasn't? It would be a major twist if suddenly Percy wasn't in the prophecy, and people are including Percy and Annabeth. And I don't know why, but I have a feeling that Annabeth is not. Don't ask me why, I just have this feeling that Annabeth will not be included in the prophecy. It could be the other way around. Percy isn't in the prophecy, and then Annabeth is. I am so excited to continue with this series and discover who the F these 7 demigods are. And I am so excited to see new characters in the Great Prophecy. They might be Roman, they might be Greek. I'm hoping they're Roman because I'm loving this Rome idea that Rick Riordan set up. It would be absolutely fantastic to have more new characters, and if these characters were Roman, then they would just escalate the thing even higher than it already is. I can't wait to find out who these 7 are. And maybe it's like we get 1 each book. It's not, you know, immediately given to you, or maybe we get the next 2 in the next book. However it is, I want to know. Another part of the mystery of this book that I really liked was Lupa. And you know, immediately when they introduced this Queen Wolf thing, I knew it was that wolf that raised Ramus and Remulus, the founders of Rome. So many subtle hints of the Roman camp, and at least I didn't figure it out until it was explained. I felt so dumb. Festus, just bae. You know, I loved the dragon. Part of the reason I put off The Lost Hero for so long was this cover, because it wasn't enticing enough. And then reading it, I love this cover that much more because we have a lovable and amazing, awesome dragon that I loved. It's sad Festus went down the way he went, but he will relive as a ship, apparently. It's just going to be phenomenal. Cannot wait. I've talked about the way I felt the Roman and Greek joining was genius. I want to reinforce that. I was blown away by how Rick Riordan did this. The last thing I want to talk about is that ending, because wow, I didn't see it coming. I honestly did not. Percy Jackson, the character, was so far from my mind reading it. I only kind of remembered he was missing when the quest ended, and like, I hope Annabeth found Percy. Anyway, Percy is in the Roman camp, which means that his memories are wiped, which means that he doesn't remember anything, which is downright painful for the reader. It's awful that doesn't remember everything that we went through him, the readers. It doesn't remember his relationship with Annabeth or Grover or Talia or even...
what's her name? The Ares daughter. Oh god.
Moving on.
I am...
The Sin of Neptune has Percy's point of view. It's not a big spoiler. I'm glad it's not a big spoiler because people have been really spoiled for the Monk of Athena, and thank God that I do not know what happens. Please do not spoil me down below. We'll see how Percy and the gang handle everything in the next book. I'm very excited. I do plan on making a book chat on that book, so stay tuned for that. End of June, maybe. Thank you so much for watching until now, if you're still here. Please let me know your opinions and thoughts and everything on The Lost Hero down below. I would love to discuss this with someone. It's a new series that I started, and I really need to talk to the fandom, you know. I really need to get back in touch with this fandom. Stay tuned for my next videos, and remember to keep your day a very bookish one. Goodbye!